All right, welcome to the second lesson in the second chapter of Video for Entrepreneurs. This is where we look at how to turn your desk, your office, wherever you work, into your own recording studio. You don't need an actual studio. We're just going to adapt wherever it is that you work. If you remember in the previous lesson, we talked about the expectation is that you do have some kind of permanent space where you work, because that's what we're going to be using to sort of adapt into a recording area. So we're going to be covering a few different things. The first is desk position, background, your monitor, camera, and microphone position on your desk. Then we'll be looking at lighting, and then we'll finish with a little bit about noise cancellation. So starting with desk. The first thing here is that you want a surface that you're working on that's big enough so that you can be relaxed. Big enough to fit all of your gear on and not feel kind of cramped and crowded, because there's nothing worse than kind of looking a little bit uncomfortable on camera. You want to be relaxed and feel like you're in a place that you can express yourself in. So if you have a chance to upgrade your desk or use a table or surface that has more space, definitely try and do that. If you have a small desk, then just be mindful of how much space you have and make sure that you can still just look relaxed on camera. Then when it comes to kind of positioning it, the first thing is you want to make sure that you have a decent amount of space behind you. So right now I have a little over half a meter behind me. I can't actually touch the wall. If I lean back, I can. And that just means that it doesn't look like the wall and whatever's on it is kind of like bearing over the top of me, and it's not casting big shadows from me being sat so close to it. So if you can, give yourself some space behind the wall or whatever it is that you're sat behind. The next thing is making sure that you avoid sitting in front of or behind direct sunlight or windows. Often you'll see people who are sat right behind some windows, and the light from the windows is so bright that it turns the person into a silhouette. I think during the pandemic, everyone sort of learnt this the hard way or some way, where suddenly everyone was having to do Zoom calls at home and realized they don't have a bunch of great spots to sit. And a lot of people were realizing that they only have bright windows behind them that was completely blocking them out. So that's something that you should also keep in mind when it comes to setting up your own studio. Now, you can sit with a window behind you or to the side of you, like I have in my setup. It just means that your camera and your lighting is going to have to work harder in order to make sure that the light coming from the window doesn't turn you into a silhouette. So it's not the end of the world, and sometimes it can be quite nice, but it is something that you need to keep in mind. With a basic camera and no lighting on your face, it'll just turn you into a silhouette. So avoid that for when it comes to placing your desk in your space. Next is background. So the stuff that's behind you while you're on camera, what people see behind you in the frame. First thing is to avoid blank walls. It's just kind of boring seeing a blank wall, and it leaves people wondering where you are. It makes the whole setup feel anonymous and mysterious. Maybe you're in a prison cell, maybe you're in some weird office building, who knows? The blank wall just kind of doesn't give anyone any information about you or where you are. If you have some stuff in the background that doesn't clutter things too much, fills the space up, it's going to give people cues as to where you are, who you are, and make them feel a bit more comfortable watching you on camera. So things like plants, lights, books, pictures are all good things to fill the space. All natural things, normal things that people would expect to see in camera when they're watching you. Try and avoid weird stuff. So anything that's unusual, unless it sort of plays some role in your video, avoid weird things that people are going to get distracted by. That's not really what you want. So if you've got I don't know, a bunch of weird party balloons or piñatas or stuff left over from the weekend or a big party you had, that's the kind of stuff you don't really want lying around in the background that makes people wondering. Random clothes and things, you don't want to have that. So stick to kind of like tidy, expectable things that you'd see behind someone. That's usually the best thing to go for. And if you've got a small space like I have, try and use some perspective. So this is going to come down to where you place your camera, but it will mean that instead of a small space looking like you're sat in a tiny little box, but it opens the place up. So my camera's sort of off center, and instead of the wall being square behind me, it actually goes off at an angle, and that means it opens up the space here and makes the room that I'm in feel a lot bigger. And you sort of wonder where it could be coming from. If the camera was up here and I was completely square to the wall, it would look quite close behind me, and it would look like I'm just kind of trapped in a small room, which I am. But hopefully my setup makes it feel like I'm in a little bit more of a spacious and welcoming space. So use perspective if you can, especially in a small space. Then we've got camera and microphone position. So a couple of, in the last lesson, we talked about the equipment that you're going to be needing to purchase or use. A good camera and mic is essential, but they're going to take up some space, and it's important to kind of get them in the right spot so that you have the best setup. So when it comes to a camera, there's two main options. First is directly in front of you, so like over your screen, or just if you're sat square to it on your desk. This can be a little bit tricky when you have a big camera like I have, and some of the ones that I suggested in the last lesson, because it has to be elevated quite high, potentially if you have a monitor or a laptop screen that it needs to be above. If you you can move it off center like this, and so you can sort of talk to your screen and then talk to the camera when you need to. And that is an easier way of dealing with a bigger camera, because you can have it a little bit lower. It doesn't need to be over the top of a monitor or something like that. But the key thing, whether it's sort of above the monitor or off to the side, is try and get it at eye level. No one wants to sort of be looking at you with you looking up, and no one really wants to be like seeing you looking down on them. Just try and keep it natural and eye level, and that's going to feel like someone's having a conversation with you and sat in the same room with you. So something like this makes the most sense. When it comes to a microphone, the main thing that you want to try is to get it off camera. So right now I've got this big boom arm and this microphone right here in camera, and it kind of spoils the shot. But for a lot of microphones, that can be hard, because to get the really good sound, it needs to be close to your mouth where your voice is coming from. So it's kind of a compromise. If you can keep the right sound that you want with the microphone off camera, great, do that. If you can't, just find a good position for it to be in, so it's not too distracting from the rest of the shot, with it being in the shot. So this is not too bad. The boom sort of comes out of the corner of the shot, and the microphone sort of at the bottom here. It doesn't distract from my face and doesn't kind of get in the way of anything else too much in the background. If you had the microphone kind of here, this would block out your face, and that's not really nice. If you had it coming down from here, this would look kind of silly. Here, kind of silly. So you just want to make sure that this kind of area is clear as possible from the microphone, and its stand as possible. Then we've got lighting. So you can go pretty crazy with lighting. If you look up cinematic lighting tips and things like that on Google or on YouTube, there's loads of videos and cool resources for learning more about cinematic lighting. It's nice to be able to like transfer, I guess, the ideas from cinema and film into your own studio setup and your own kind of amateur semi-pro video. But the two main things are that you want a really good main light source. This is going to be your key light. So in the last lesson, I talked about just get a softbox. This is what I have. I got a softbox up here, and it illuminates a big area really well in a soft, nice, natural way. And that's kind of the key thing. That's the main thing that will make your setup look good. You want to have this ideally pretty close to you, so that the light is strong and in a position where it at least illuminates most of your face. I sort of have mine off to the left, and so it kind of gets one side of it, and then I get like a darker side on the right here. And then depending on the time of day, I've got this light on, which kind of adds some extra light here, or I'll have some extra light coming from the windows. But the key thing, main strong, a a decently strong light source in front of you is going to be the main thing. Then the next thing, which is really just for effect, are practical lights. And these are lights that live in your background. They could be a lamp, they could be a candle, something like that that sits in your background that adds to your atmosphere. They're not really going to provide a bunch of light to the to you and to illuminating you. They're just going to be there to be another decoration. So if you look at this illustration on the right, you can kind of see there's all these lamps and candles. You can imagine those kind of setting a nice mood in the background of the shot here. I don't have any practical lights, and we'll talk about that a bit later. If you wanted to take this further, the other things you can consider are having like a backlight, so something that would not be visible in the shot, but it would illuminate the back of you so that you really stand out from your background, or having like a fill light, which would be kind of like secondary light to your main one, that would do the job of kind of adding some extra color or extra light to another side of your face in the shot. So even though I don't really have one, my regular room's light kind of acts as that, where it means that my whole appearance on the camera is not too dark, even with this one only kind of pointing at one side. So yeah, that's lighting. Now we're going to wrap things up with the setup guide with noise, or noise isolation. So preventing the sound that comes out of your mouth from bouncing all around the room, and then your microphone picking up a really annoying and not nice sounding sound. So the simple way to do this, or the first thing that you want to try with this, is to isolate the sound using carpet, curtains, or other soft furniture. So I'm in a room with some hard wooden floors, and normally that would then just add to the echo and the reflection of the sound in this room, and it wouldn't sound good. So I've got a rug down here which helps dampen the sound. It doesn't bounce off soft things as much. I've also got blinds that I can pull down, and that can also help with that, especially when I don't want light from the outside. But if you had curtains, that would be even better, because that would be a much softer surface to dampen the sound. And then other things, some people sort of put rugs up on the wall that can really block off the hard surfaces that would normally be there. You don't really want that in your shot though, so you kind of have to like find the right balance of what you want in your shot and the noise isolation. So the next thing then is, if you don't have that stuff lying around, is to get some acoustic panels. And I've got a bunch of acoustic panels, and I'm going to show you these in a little bit, which help isolate the sound in the corner of this room here, because there's these big blank walls and I'm in a corner, so it's very easy for the sound to kind of just bounce back and forth and then end up messing up the audio in here. So to wrap up this lesson, we're going to do a quick analysis of my setup. So I've made a few references to what I have and how I have my recording space set up, and we're going to look at it in some more detail, and then kind of go through it together and see where it could be already improved. And hopefully this helps connect all the dots for you from some of the gear that we looked at in the previous lesson, and these ideas I've been talking about for how you want to set up your own recording space. So this is what I see. So you see this on camera, but what I look at is this. Here's my screen, and I've got a rig kind of here with everything set up on it. So let's kind of go through what I've got going on here. So starting at the top left, you can see I've got this big soft box. So it's this kind of obnoxiously large light that's really close to me. So if you're looking at me on camera here, it's barely a foot in front of me. So it provides a lot of light, and because it's got this big white kind of sheet, it diffuses the light so it comes across much softer and looks a bit more natural. If you compare that to like a ring light, you kind of see the shape of the ring, especially in your eyes. But this really helps a lot. So that's why I've added this to the list. If you can find a smart way of incorporating it into your setup, then it's definitely worth just setting it up and leaving it there. Don't worry about it, just set it up once and you're good to go. Again, these are super cheap. You don't need to get anything super professional for this. Just get something that does the job and is big enough. Then down here, I've got my camera. So this is kind of set back into the corner, and that's what helps me get the perspective in the room to make the room feel a lot bigger instead of being kind of square with the wall and the wall kind of just being the only thing that you see. Instead, you kind of see a bit of the shape of the room, and that kind of makes it feel a little bit more natural and welcoming, hopefully. Now the camera and the softbox and the mic, which we'll talk about in a second, is all connected to this kind of rig, which has this main kind of pole here, and then all these arms come off it, and I can even attach my laptop. There's a few different options out there for this kind of thing. I would really recommend one of these. If you're starting from scratch, getting one of these is like a lifesaver. You just stick that onto the end of your desk, get all the things you need on it, and you're good to go. It's pretty compact. It doesn't feel like it kind of obstructs my desk and regular work, and it doesn't look too bad either, which is great. And so then I've got my mic. So I talked about the Shure SM7B, which I've got. I need to have this quite close to my mouth, so I've got this kind of boom arm that really comes over the top here, but I can move it around into different spots depending on what I'm recording, which is handy. Ideally, it would be nice if this wasn't in shot, but that's something I'm going to have to improve. Now, I've also got the audio interface and preamp, the couple things I showed you in the previous lesson, which you need to have in order to make the Shure SM7B work. If you have this kind of setup, you just kind of want to tuck that out of the way and not let it interfere too much with it, because it is quite a clunky bit of gear. But yeah, you can kind of set that off to the back and forget about it. And finally, yeah, I've got this cheap acoustic foam. It's basic stuff, the cheapest stuff I found on, almost the cheapest stuff I found on Amazon. It does a pretty good job, but it does feel like after I've kind of got this set up that I could probably go a bit further, maybe fill in some of these gaps, maybe put it on some other walls, but this feels like a pretty good start. So that's the setup from the desk side. Now let's talk about the setup on the, I guess, the wall side, the office side. So here's sort of another perspective of what you see behind me. I've got this big blank wall, and that reflects a lot of sound. So one of the main things I want to figure out here is how I can stop this from reflecting so much sound and still make it look nice. So the current thing, of course, which is more decorative, is that I've got some pictures on here which really help with the scene that I'm trying to set in my shot. So that's great. But again, still, these pictures are going to reflect a lot of sound. I'm not too far away from them. You can sort of see the back of my chair there. So this is something I might need to think about in the future. I've got a plant, which just helps with the whole vibe. It looks a bit silly when you see it here, but when you see it on shot, I think it looks kind of cool. And then just some regular furniture and books to just kind of set that kind of natural feel. And you can see the rug that I've got on the floor here, which sort of covers off the hard wooden surface. The other point that I want to sort of share about this is that I'm in a really basic attic. This isn't really a room. This is just an attic or a storage space I've converted into an office. And the point is that you can kind of take something like this, and with a little bit of work and some of these tips, you can turn it into a place that looks really good and comfortable and nice on camera. And it doesn't take too much effort. The biggest effort, in fact, in setting up this whole space was actually just painting the wall, because before it was kind of a pretty ugly color and splotchy and had broken plaster and everything. Once I got that sorted, getting the rest of the setup in here was pretty straightforward. So if you have anything better than an attic or a storage unit, you shouldn't have too much trouble converting it into a nice recording space. So to wrap up, improvements on my studio, better sound isolation. We kind of want to do something about this blank wall and help it with the sound. We want less of these hard surfaces, especially in a small room like this. Ideally, I could find a way to get the mic out of shot, but at the moment, I kind of want this sound right now. If I wanted the microphone out of shot, I'd probably have to get an even more expensive microphone and a crazier setup with one that can kind of pick up the sound really nicely from a distance. Or I'd have to do like extra editing of the sound after I've recorded it, and I don't really want to do that because I kind of want to have an efficient process for recording videos. And lastly, maybe some more lighting options. So when it's a bit darker in here, I just have this main light and the one up there, and sort of it can look a little bit lifeless behind me as the light goes down. So maybe a lamp over in the corner there would be nice, or maybe some other kind of light sources to play around with the color and the mood. That might be a nice thing for me to add. Okay, wrapped up the second lesson in the second chapter, where we look at your studio and getting that set up. I hope there were some tips in here that you're able to take into your own recording space, your own office, and start to think about how you're going to transform it. The point is not that you follow these tips line by line, but more just get some inspiration from it and understand some of the principles behind it that you can then translate into your own space. So looking forward to seeing what kind of adaptations you make to your own recording space and the setups that you get on camera. I'll see you in the next lesson where we talk about video software.